who are killed in action?
No, I think the recent controversy has been around financial, whatever payments have been made, whether it is made or not. Very clearly, the status that I took, and Army has also released a media brief, that 98.391 lakh have been paid. This is primarily the insurance from the Government of India. And there is a DSP account with the bank which kind of ensures that payment also goes 50 lakh, 48 from the Government of India. So that has already been cleared. And all the final settlement of account that takes place, you have to wait for all the paperwork to be over. And for that, one of the critical things is the police report. Based on that final adjudication takes place, that it is battle casualty attributable. Unless that attributability comes, the ex gratia cannot be paid. From the Central Welfare Fund, Army Welfare Fund.
So who does that?
So that is a complete process. Ministry of Defence does it. But it is also dependent on the reports that come from police. In this case, J&K police will send the report. I think that those actions should have been completed. It was in the final stages, as I knew last week. And some more money will get transferred. That would be ex gratia from the Army Central Welfare Fund and his balance of payment for the unserved portion and Seva Nidhi package. So overall 67 odd lakhs for the will go. So total emoluments that his next of kin will get is of the order of 1.65 crores. So these are the hard facts. And I think there was again some controversy regarding, this is insurance, it is no. In case of Agniveer in particular, the insurance is paid by the Government of India. The Agniveers don't even contribute.
So you mean, sir, the premium is paid? The premium is paid by the government?
No, in case of a regular soldier, for example, if you take a
every
soldier today,
from his salary.
Every month roughly about 5,000 gets cut.
Like the pension of any government officer.
So you are into a contributory insurance scheme.
Okay.
In all three services. So roughly let's say 5,000 per month at Sipahi level gets charged, and 60,000 per year, and you get insured. The insurance figures are little different in the three services, but of the order of around 50 lakhs.
Okay.
50 to 60 lakh is the insured figure for Sipahis. That is contributory. In case of Agniveers, they don't contribute. Government of India pays the insurance, the entire 48 lakhs, should something happen. And in this case, that is the case.
Okay.
So it must be clearly understood. It is from the government that this insurance amount has come for 48 lakhs.
I guess I don't want to specifically go into one case. The controversy also is that from the very beginning, this thing of why the delay in giving compensation to the Agniveers or others also, for that matter, this whole process of verification, going for you keep hearing about that in the social media too.
Okay, I'll explain that. Whenever such a incident happens and somebody loses life, in all cases, whether it is battle casualty, whether it is physical casualty, attributable, non-attributable, always the insurance amount gets credited straight away. So there are processes. For example, if in the case of a normal soldier, group insurance schemes, when they credit, they have their own policies. They'll normally credit 50% straight away within 24 or 48 hours. And then they will meet the family and ask, how would you like the rest? In your name, in children's name, whatever, in fixed deposit.
That so also is a little bit of a sticking point, isn't it? Like,
it
who
is not
is the
next of kin?
No,
next of kin is very clearly defined. Next of kin is in the papers. There is no confusion on that.
Okay.
So only in the next of kin account can the money go, and there is a lot of financial prudence guidance that is given to the family, because many of the soldiers' family would need that. So that is also provided by the insurance company, by our own officers and men who are dealing with it.
Okay.
Always the insurance amount gets credited first. The ex gratia and other amounts, there is a process, because if it is a battle casualty or if it is a physical casualty which is attributable, it is going from the government, and therefore it has to be established. That process of establishment has a certain guideline. The post-mortem report should come, all the incident reports, the court of inquiry, the report from the police. I'm talking of the major things. So that process needs to be completed. It is no different in case of a normal soldier or Agniveer. It is
Okay.
exactly same.
That is important.
And
That is
how long
important.
does it take, sir?
No, normally it should not take very long. But I would say 2 to 3 months it does take, because there is an inquiry involved.
Okay, so now why is this not informed to the next of kin, the parents, the wife, or the siblings? If this is explained, then the family at least doesn't feel left in the lurch or nervous that maybe they're not going to get it.
No, I don't think that is the case.
Because that's what happened in this case also, where the parents
I don't think so. I don't think so. Every unit takes great care. They are at pains to be in touch with the family. There are always some people who are with the family, and they explain at length. Now you must just imagine a family which has gone through this trauma. A lot of people interacting, a lot of people advising. So it is that sense of confusion that is being created. I just cannot believe that the unit and the army people concerned have not informed the next of kin in detail.
Okay.
It is not possible. Just take it from me. It is just not possible. And the unit from where this Agniveer and he lost his life, that unit is deeply involved.
Okay.
It's always the case.
Okay.
The unit, and they will continue to hold the family's hand. There is a lot of life that needs to be tackled after the initial shock is over, and that gets tackled by the unit.
So there was this spar between opposition leader of the opposition in Parliament, Rahul Gandhi, and the Raksha Mantri, and in that debate, Rajnath Singh ji said, and I quote, "The Agniveer scheme was brought in after taking suggestions from 158 organizations." The opposition, meanwhile, claims that many top officers who don't want to be named, some are going public, some are not. They were against the Agnipath scheme right from the beginning. Now, were the armed forces and the Jawans taken in their opinions taken into consideration before the scheme was launched, and subsequently, if there have been any doubts, is there a feedback mechanism?
And sir, you were in chair as chief of air staff when the discussions were being held for the implementation of the scheme.
Yeah, so let me explain this. The discussions on this scheme were very, very lengthy and very detailed. Okay, it started with a certain proposal, and thereafter it was discussed at length. If I have to put a period to this, it was, if I remember correctly, almost 2 years. Almost 2 years. So everything was debated. Now, when you talk about senior officers were not or were against or were not in favor, that is not the case. The case is when this scheme gets discussed, for example, how would we tackle the technical Agniveers? Should their number of years be longer? Should the percentage be higher of retention of technical people? That was one of our initial thought process, because Air Force is highly technical, Navy is highly technical from that sense. But even Army today, we can't say is not technical. They also have a lot of requirement of highly technical equipment. So these were the areas where a lot of discussion and debate took place. All three services, all the concerned people were involved. Chiefs were personally involved.
So
and all the departments of the three services were involved.
Okay.
What they are talking of, that other organizations, etc., that were discussed, once the basic format was made, the whole paper was circulated to various other departments and their inputs were taken. So it is not to say that it wasn't discussed, inputs were not taken, all the government departments were consulted. Obviously, a scheme like this needs inputs from all the departments.
Okay, civilian as well as military.
Civilian as well as military.
And paramilitary was also taken?
Of course. It goes to all the departments. For example, when it goes to Home Ministry, all the paramilitary related inputs come from them.
Because at that time, we were told that many of them, once they finish, once the Agniveers finish with their tour of duty, they can be absorbed in paramilitary forces, or they can apply to the vacancies in paramilitary forces.
Absolutely. This was also part of the discussion that upfront we should be able to say this, and all the three services were keen that this provision of what happens to the 75% people who do not become permanent, what is the plan for that, and that is where all these discussions were also, points were also taken, that there should be a certain percentage fixed reserved in CAPF, there should be some intake process in the DPSUs, we should discuss with corporate sectors that they should give them priority. So in all government organization and non-government organizations, there should be an element of how these Agniveers who go out after 4 years, how will they get absorbed?
Okay.
And there must be institutional support for that.
There's one senior service officer who said that why wasn't it tried first in paramilitary forces rather than introducing it directly on the armed forces?
Dekho, there are a lot of veterans who are giving advice on the matter, but the issue is most of them are not aware of the kind of discussions and in-depth deliberations that were done. Okay, it is easy to say that do a pilot project. They said that even army should have done a pilot project, but just imagine that you do a pilot project with a limited number of people, and there are two entries. Entry through Agniveer and entry through normal service. You just imagine the chaos that can happen, and that is when this statement is true that there are two kind of soldiers. One Agniveer who will only stay for 4 months, 4 years, and one regular soldiers who are actually sorted for life. That means they are pensionable service, no worries, and stability in life. That is when these issues would have come up. So the whole approach was that we need to reform looking at the future. How do we want to restructure ourselves for the future? How do we reduce the average age of a fighting soldier? Okay,
a younger army.
How do we make it younger? So how do we bring in the right balance of young and the experienced people? Now, this can't be done in piecemeal or in incremental method.
At this point, I want to...
And it would have failed. Just mark my words. If any pilot project, if you do of this nature, with this thought process, and you have this kind of disparity in the entry process, how do you expect it to get
on
absorbed?
this young army versus old army? I want to run a video. But before that video, General Naravane, in his memoir, which has not yet been released, there's an excerpt which has come out in the media, and he says the Agnipath scheme surprised the army. It was a bolt out of the blue for the Navy and the Air Force. Now, this is an excerpt in a newspaper which has come out. But a few months before there was talk of the book, we had him on our podcast, and I'm going to run this for you. Can you play this? I'm coming to the Agniveer scheme. There's still that little confusion in the minds of people.
As far as HR policies are concerned, HR policies always undergo changes. Now, in the mid-70s, the colour service used to be only 7 years, with a 7-year reserve liability, and there was nothing like pension. Not many people know that, but that was changed. It was changed to 15 years to make it pensionable with a 2-year reserve liability. So, if you can increase it, you can decrease it. HR policies will also be dynamic. So, to say that you can't change a HR policy is not correct. Now, we are trying out this scheme. Give it a chance. How do you know it will not work? When the age was increased, or the colour service was increased from 7 to 15 years, there was a UN cry that, oh, we'll be an old army. How can you have such, we need youngsters in the army. Exactly the opposite argument was given at that point of time. Now when you're trying for a young army, everybody is saying why.
So those who are quoting the former army chief, his excerpt from that book, there's also this part. So it's not as if he was against the Agnipath scheme. He did say that it's an experiment and it might not work. It's something that is being tried out. So which means that all of you were consulted. It was not a bolt from the blue that came, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very clear. It's very much in favor of it. And I won't even put it as an experiment. It is a HR reform and a induction process that has changed. We should have no doubts about it, and we should work to make it successful. It is well thought out, and it is not something that has come, totally unconnected. If you see many of the advanced armies of the world, this is successfully being employed.
Yes.
Those are I'm talking of armies with great reputation. I'm
General
not talking.
Rawat used to talk about it quite often about it.
So it is not something that has not been tried. It is not something that has been just pulled out and specific to our requirement. But from looking at our own requirements in our neighborhood and how do we lower the age profile, this was one of the best methods. Now when you talk of bolt from the blue, I have not read that since it has not come out. I am not sure exactly in what manner. You need to read the book to really understand the connotation and the context.
Okay.
For example, many variations were being discussed that for, let's say, for Air Force, for the technical, can we have a little higher percentage, for the Navy too. See, anything you go beyond 5 years, after 7 years, if you have to send a person back to the field, it is bad for him. 4 years, just the right period when he can go back to the society and have the second career.
So I did ask, some politicians at that time when it was being introduced, because one was this. They said, look, if we keep them till they are 30, then they are, it works against them. If they join the service, say at 18, 19, 20, whatever, they get into it. And then when they come out at 26, they are still young and they can join the workforce.
Absolutely.
But when you come out, if you come out at 30, then you are unemployable for certain categories of jobs.
Absolutely.
So it makes you that you've got whatever training, you've got your certification. Like, for example, if you've learned how to operate a radar, you can do that when you come out. If you know how to operate certain transport systems, you can be employed elsewhere. So when you are under 30, you are more employable in the private sector. This is what I was told. But what is happening now is that the other flip side comes out is हम लोग सर्विस से निकल जाएंगे, हमारी शादियां नहीं होंगी क्योंकि लड़कियां बोलेंगी या उनके परिवार वाले बोलेंगे कि ये क्या, मतलब तुमको तो पेंशन भी नहीं मिलता, कुछ नहीं मिलता.
Let me again explain my viewpoint on this. So on that issue, when you say bolt from blue, there are many variations that were discussed. Finally, it was decided, look, we need to have one scheme. Same has to be true for all three services, and we'll implement it across the board. So that was a decision taken. It has its own processes. Leave aside minor issues that we need to do. So rest of the thing, we have to sort out our training pattern so that within this 4, thereafter, how do we train people whom we retain? We train them again, or second phase of training for their technical abilities, for improving, for their technical employment to be better. This issue of 4 years was very important. Less than 4 years, there is a combat effectiveness issue. More than 4 years, there is an issue that you brought out. It is too late for him to go to the society or for the second career. What we need to look at is that the 75% of people who are going out after 4 years, we need to take care of them. And the way to take care is to have a confirmed reservation into CAPFs or all the issues that we've discussed in DPSUs, in all government organizations, in state governments. That is where everybody should concentrate. Finally, if we are able to settle everybody into a good job in government and in semi-government or in DPSUs, and also in corporate outside, in private sector, then look at the advantages. A very dedicated, disciplined force, a soldier who has worked for 4 years, who is trained, who is motivated, goes into civil society in other forms, in other employment, and continues to contribute with his traits. So as a benefit to the society, it is huge. As a benefit to the service, we get the next lot of Agniveers. The age profile remains young. So whole cycle continues. Okay. So we have to look at this way. I think we should concentrate our energies not in talking against the scheme or how this should be closed, but how to make it successful, and how do we support the 75% of the people who will come out. Why is nobody talking of that? The state government should come forward and say, okay, this is what we'll do. And some state governments have done that.
Right.
Yeah.
You were talking about vets. One of the vets says, and I'm not naming him, but I will give you the quotation. The only motivation driving the Agnipath is reducing the pension bill. The fact that this scheme will degrade combat effectiveness is known to all who understand national security. So there are 2 points: wage bill and
Yeah,
combat
you haven't
effectiveness.
named, but you are putting me in trouble.
Your
Okay.
postmates, sir.
Yeah, no, let us. I don't know in what context. I think he was commenting on somebody's article. Okay, let's put things. First issue is pension. Of course, it will reduce the pension bill. So that is good, no? But if the issue is that reducing the pension bill, was that the sole criteria, or was that the motivation to bring this? Answer is no.
Okay.
The clear understanding that needs to come is that the motivation to bring in this is to look at the future. See, the technology is changing rapidly. The way the wars will be fought will be changing rapidly. The kind of threats are changing rapidly. So we need to adapt to it. So we need to have a profile which is younger, which is more technologically adept. We need to have a system wherein with this 4 years, actually more technically qualified youngsters will come and say, okay, 4 years, let us work for the nation, work in the defense, get that exposure. So we get a higher level of technically qualified people entering into Agniveers, be it from ITIs or be it from other trained institutions. So that will happen. Secondly, the force itself, all three services will get to choose 25% out of this. So we will get the top end of capability. And they will be permanently with us for a higher experienced people who are going to be medium level supervisors, senior supervisors, and who are going to be the core of the system. So we get a better trained and better qualified person in terms of caliber. We'll have a group from when they get permanent, very high caliber induction. So this is how you need to transform.
Just to come back to the wage bill part, there are also studies which people have done and think tanks have said that that the Agnipath scheme is not really something to reduce the wage bill, because actually if you see, because of the amount of money which will go in from the government side on that Sevanidhi package and things like that, it's the math doesn't make sense. It's not as if the government is saving a lot, and in about another, 5 or 10 years or something like that, 50 to 60% of your men on the ground are going to be Agniveers. The churning is going to be so much that you're going to have more and more Agniveers deployed, especially in battle zones or supposed battle zones. So the whole concept of the math is a little confusing. So obviously it's not for wage bill. I'll hand you over to Ajit about the combat effectiveness of Agniveers if you have any questions.
Yeah, but before that, on the wage bill, actually the wage bill would be a little higher because when the scheme stabilizes, since only 25% is being retained, the initial induction would get stepped up in time to come as a...
That Sevanidhi package.
No,
that
not
they
only
were doing.
Sevanidhi package. The number of people would also become higher.
Okay.
So initial induction would be higher depending upon how the overall cadre gets defined. It keeps getting revised.
And if they get absorbed in paramilitary.
So, no.
25%
get absorbed. So 75% go out. So if you see the overall cadre, the intake levels would rise. The number of Agniveers versus a normal entry, the numbers would rise in order to keep your overall cadre at the numbers which get revised, but whatever is finalized. So the numbers will be higher. The wage bill doesn't go down as much, but the pension bill, yes, which will kick in after 15 years, let's say, and it would have an impact. And that's a good part. It's all right. But that's not the only issue.
No.
If pension was the only issue, government could have thought of transferring to NPS. If pension was the only issue.
Yeah.
But that is not the case. In fact, defense services are not so much in favor of NPS, and the government respected that. And it is totally not the criteria.
Okay.
The issues are to do with the reform in terms of how we are going to induct and what caliber of people and what we are targeting in terms of youthful profile. Yeah.
So, talking about combat effectiveness, when the scheme was being discussed, was it raised at that time that this will affect the combat effectiveness if we have newer people coming in
and less training time?
And they are not they would with lesser training time, they would not be equipped or trained well enough to tackle the requirements of the battle zones, like what or
You must.
CICT operations?
I got a
which
point. You must understand combat effectiveness. Uh, in this scheme, a person will stay for 4 years. Therefore, he would be trained to a certain level, and he will be employed to that level in the combat. Be it a soldier, be it in the Air Force, the Agniveer who will be on the tarmac preparing aircraft, or similar for the Navy. The issue comes up more on the technical side. For example, Air Force is affected, Navy is affected, where for qualifying him to a higher level of technical ability, you need more training. So if 9 months to a year more is required, you cannot do it in this 4 years, because if you spend 1.5 year in training, his utility to you is much lesser if he goes out in 4. So that aspect of training, the Air Force has postponed to beyond 4 years. That higher technical ability. For example, from Air Force, if I have to explain, on the tarmac, first line of servicing, they will all be involved. For the air, even for fighters, for all kind of aircrafts, and for all combat equipment. For the second line of servicing, which means he needs to have in-depth technical training, he needs to be trained further, which will happen after 4 years when the person is gone into
that
permanent.
he'll be retained.
So overall, the balance that you need to change your training pattern to see that the effectiveness is not reduced. Similar thing will happen in the army. Therefore, to say that his combat effectiveness will not be same as the normal soldier is not so.
Okay.
And we forget what happened in 71.
The short
in those
service
times,
commission.
there were short service commission, there was emergency commission. There were people at that time with 7 years color service. General Nanawaris explained that so well.
Yeah.
So and there were people who the trainings that time were shortened, and people were sent to the front line. And look at the kind of performance they gave. I think initially you must understand one level of training for 6 months. When you go to the unit, the training continues. That is when, with that on-job training or whatever you call, the Agniveer get integrated into the unit. That is where the real combat effectiveness builds up. That is where the real capability to fight war is given and taken. Okay, and that I don't think there will be an issue.
Sir, we were discussing about the training of these troops. Now, Agniveers are going to get trained for 6 months, whereas earlier this used to range between 52 weeks to a year and a half. That was the time frame for training. Now, if we compare this training time of 6 months with what is being done in, say, Pakistan or China or in Western countries, is it much lesser time, or is it the same as what they have?
With this Agniveer scheme, when the training is done for 6 months, for their employment, that training has been reformatted to cater for everything that they need to train for their first phase of employment. When they get permanent, they would be retrained, and they will be trained further on other for higher technical duties, for deeper technical understanding and capability building. Okay, that is one. In comparison, if you have to do a similar, when you have a short-term induction program like this as initial induction, for example, Israeli Air Force, if I have to talk of Air Force, they come for 2 years. They have a similar, they in fact have less than 6 months. And there are aircraft which are equally capable, and in some cases more advanced than we have. And they are doing wonderfully well. Similarly, in other air forces, in other even Army and Navy, this pattern would remain same. So when you have a shorter induction, for example, Agniveers for 4 years, you have to modify your training pattern to be able to cater for that and do your training, right level of training for the right level of employment. I think that is the crux, and that is what services are doing.
Russia-Ukraine war, there were cases where the training was inadequate when it came to the Ukrainian situation. The same thing was brought in and said that, look, they are not incentivized enough. They've been brought in just for that point of time. They don't know आगे जाके उनको कुछ compensation मिलेगा कि नहीं. What is the motivation in laying down your life for the country when you don't know whether your family is going to get the benefit or not? Plus, if you're not trained enough to handle those kind of situations, because you have to modify, right? Even though you're probably trained to drive a 3-tonner, you might be needed at that stage to do a hand-to-hand combat because it's a war zone. So in 6 months, how do you train from becoming a driver of a 3-tonner to a hand-to-hand combat soldier?
देखो, it is a wrong comparison from Russia-Ukraine because there people have been put into war situation with hardly any training. You are comparing with them with hardly any training, with a month training or with little, because initially when the sudden shortfall is there, those are the people who are not adequately trained and who find themselves ill-equipped to handle situations. That is a lack of training. Here there is no lack. 6 months is dedicated training, and I say again, the real training for combat really happens in the units. When they get posted to the units, their on-job training, and it's so for all three services. For army, it would be that unit would take them up and build them up for combat situations, and the platoon trains together. So it is not that they are all only Agniveers. There will be a balance, and there will be a combination of experienced people and Agniveers. Similarly, in the Air Force. When you say he's preparing aircraft on the first line servicing, on that also he's not alone. There is a team. If a team of 8 is working, there will be maybe 4 Agniveers and 2 will be medium level experienced people, and 1 will be really senior experienced people, 1 or 2. So that's how it works.
Okay.
So there will be a combination of experience and there will be a combination of Agniveer, and that's how all combat teams work. So our army ethos and army training and overall the experience that we have in all three services is so huge. It is not a worry at all.
So you've been in a fighter pilot.
There are people worrying unnecessarily.
If your aircraft has
the
been...
defense services are not worried. The people sitting outside are worried who know little about where we are.
It's everybody's fears need to to put to rest. So one of the questions is, like, you've been a fighter pilot. So I would ask you this also, that suppose you were told that your aircraft has been cleared for flying by an Agniveer, would you trust that information that you're coming, or would that little doubt come in, is that engineer qualified enough?
You are in an operation, in the army case of the army, you are in an operation, and for a normal soldier, right next to him is an Agniveer. Would there be any trust issues?
Absolutely not. We must understand how a unit works. If I am going to an aircraft, even now, even before Agniveers came, they were very young people who were doing the first line servicing. They were with 6 months service, 1 year service. They also got trained 6 months plus little more dedicated training in the previous pattern, which was another 6 months. So it is not to say that they had some huge amount of knowledge on the aircraft. But you believed in them because they get trained for what action he is taking. There is no doubt in that. He goes through his checklist, he performs that action, his supervisor cross-checks and they sign it. Similarly, it would happen for the army. If there is Agniveer next to you, you have worked on him and trained him. If you get into a combat situation, I don't see any issue that would happen. Agniveer with a, let's say, 2-year service and a normal soldier with a 2-year service would perform the same because that is what the unit does. That's what the unit would work towards.
Sir, like now you are saying that they would be adequately trained by the unit as well as during their normal training period. Now, do you think with all these controversies happening, now all those now we are I think this is third or fourth batch of Agniveers which would be joining the services. You think there will be a doubt in their minds with this controversy around? Would it be affecting their morale on whether they would be able to perform in the units or not, or in combat in uniform whether they would be able to
biases
perform?
do
you think all these controversies will create a doubt in their minds about their capabilities?
There is
or
a possibility.
How they would be treated?
Yeah, there is a possibility, but normally what happens is in a unit, they are so busy doing their day-to-day task and their training and their integration and how they work, that there is no time and there is no this kind of things normally doesn't affect. But if you continue to harp on these kind of things in the media or in the media sphere, and the youngsters today are media savvy and they pick up a lot of these things, of course there is a possibility that it would affect them in terms of what is happening and why not. If you try and give them this option, no, we are working towards stopping this scheme, and people will start thinking that it can become pensionable. So that is why it is important for everybody to understand that we should get out of this kind of working towards against the government in political terms in order to say that this scheme is not good, close it. This is a done scheme. We should work towards making it successful and not drag army and its training methods and training and futuristic training patterns into these controversies.
But they've
It is not
said,
a good.
They've
It's not a
already
good
said
idea.
that if they were to come to power, they will scrap the deal.
Okay, so when you come to power, you take your actions. But point is, now to vitiate the atmosphere is not a good idea at all. And that's why they say into these political controversies, the army should not be dragged.
Right, I get that.
It has a national security connotation.
Implication. So, when it comes to opposing the Agnipath scheme, we talked about the politics behind it. But even since you are now in the BJP, even the BJP's allies now are not too keen on this. The JDU has said that, and I quote, there is resentment, so we will seek a review of Agniveer. We will not oppose it. Especially now when the allies matter so much to the BJP. Is there any scope for tinkering or taking in a feedback mechanism where if there is a problem and whether from the opposition or from allies, if there are second views about it, is there any scope for tinkering this?
Okay, firstly, the allies have made this statement, and I'm sure, I'm not aware, but I'm sure they are being briefed fully on what the scheme is, what the background is, what was done, where it is now, and detailed brief would be done. So it's a matter of time before they understand it fully, and then thereafter also they might have some views, which would get catered by the government. It is important to understand, you mentioned tinkering. Every scheme, there is a provision for review. I think this has been stated by the government. Raksha Mantri himself has said, and we must understand this clearly. The scheme has just started. It's just 2 years old. By the time the first cycle of 4 years gets completed, you will see that many of the things get tinkered with or get modified and get reformed to make it better. And that is why I say that if there is a point, for example, if veterans have an issue, they must write to the government, they must write to army chief, they must write to CDS and give their viewpoint, not come out in the media and say with half knowledge that, okay, do this or stop it.
Okay.
Similarly, any suggestions must be given to the government, and at the review time, they will get catered.
So
in fact, when this Agniveer got martyred, when this incident happened, I had met CDS. I think within about 15 days there was some event, and this was fresh, and it was also weighing on my mind that now what happens. And when I was discussing casually with him and said that, look, when somebody loses life in Agniveer, we need to look at it a little more in depth. He said yes, and I'm also concerned, and we are looking at things and many other reviews that we plan. We will look at all these things carefully. And this I'm sharing you. This is somewhere in Feb. So they were already, the organization is well aware.
And
The service
feedback
chiefs, the CDS, yes,
mechanism,
feedback mechanism, how to make it better. And that's why I said, let us concentrate on how do we look after the 75 people who come out? How do we ensure they get into a good place? How do we make it better? Be it cases like this, suppose somebody loses life, how do we make it better for him? Okay. There are various
and the
methods.
families also.
There are various methods. How do we look after the family?
Okay.
If somebody gets an award, how do we reward him further?
Because
does
for
he
a
automatically
family,
get permanent?
Whose son has died in action,
Absolutely.
killed in action, for him it doesn't matter whether he was an Agniveer or a regular
Absolutely,
soldier.
and there would be reviews. I'm sharing
Yeah.
with you. I hope the CDS doesn't get upset, but I'm sharing with you my discussion with CDS right in Feb.
Okay.
And he said, yes, these are issues that we need to modify further, and in time to come, you will see many of these things coming in.
And forces have already, like the government is already taking, the DME is already taking feedback from the forces on
Yeah,
these
of course,
issues.
and that's the mechanism. The feedback is also taken from the Agniveers. And some of the feedback from Agniveers is that they want better, let's say, education qualification at the end of it. How do we, and that's also an important area. For example, why can't we bring in areas like if Agniveer, when he comes out into the society and he goes for advanced studies, why can't we block some seats for him? If he applies, why can't we give him preference? Suppose somebody wants to do engineering, somebody wants to do medicine, why not?
Yeah.
and give him preference. So these are the areas that we need to work.
So there's also this thing that many vets who have retired and they've gone back to their villages, especially in Haryana, Rajasthan, where getting into the armed forces is a dream for most youth. You'll see them running on roads, practicing, kasrat kar rahe hain and all that. For them, this Agniveer, because they're reading social media, so they are wondering whether this is the right path to go or not. And you're talking about these states which are literally the sword arm of India. So if in these states there is confusion and there is worry, what should the youth be doing at this stage?
No, this I must to the youth say very clearly, that they should not get mixed up, or they should not get look at this vitiated kind of dialogue and gumrah hone ki zarurat nahi hai. They must apply for it and get into the Agniveer scheme. That is the way to get into defense services. And if you are dedicated, if you are motivated, if you have to, you made up your mind that you would want to be in defense services, you would feature in that 25%. You work for that. And should you not make it, there would be enough that is will be done by the government to ensure that you will have a job. And you will, there is no, let us wait for 2 more years. So by end of 26, first lot will come out, and that is where the real litmus test will come. That how do we look after those people, and you will see that they will all get placed well, and that is where the scheme will, all these doubts will go away. So to the youth, it is very important to understand that don't get sidetracked by these kind of discussions. You want to join the defense, this is the only way. Join the Agniveer, and with your dedication, you will make it.
And what do you have to say to those people who say that that the BJP government, by bringing in the Agniveer scheme or the Agnipath scheme, is going to be creating a highly militarized youth in this country? Youth who, if they don't get job, can become mercenaries in other countries.
Oh, that's an extreme argument. I don't know how people can make this argument. A person who comes into defense, spends 4 years, he's the most disciplined, dedicated, he's worked towards the nation, he's passionate, his sense of patriotism is very high. When he goes into civil society, that's what he takes. He doesn't take his gun to the civil society. He takes his values, his traits. And he will be a very, very strong core. He will change. The civil society will change around him if we all talk. And what is most important for our defense services? It is the love and affection that the entire country gives to the defense services, and the respect. Okay, then people coming out of this into the society would be respected, and the people around that will change. This is a totally extreme argument. Absolutely, I don't know who makes this. I am totally, this is.
I just wanted to ask you, sir, since you have seen a lot of foreign countries, foreign air forces operating, foreign militaries, you have interacted a lot with them, and many of the advanced Western countries have this tour of duty kind of a scheme where people come in for a few years and they go back to their normal lives because there have been cases of very famous athletes who have joined there in the US, who joined the forces, went back. And is there any data, any study which you know of where there have been cases that people with after short service tenures have gone back and indulged into violence in society?
No, I don't recollect any, but I know of many cases where people have been in short service or in the defense services and who've gone out and done so well. So well.
Like Singapore has conscription.
Yeah.
You have to do. But where do you find Singaporeans who have become...
Yeah, who become militarized.
Notorious dons.
And does it happen in Israel? And just
Israel,
look.
I don't know, because they are... it's a different concept itself. Israeli army, the defense forces, theirs is different.
No,
the
there's
IDF is a
difference,
completely different mentality.
But initially when they come for 2 years and when they go back to the society, they are an asset to the society. And when the country needs them, when the defense services need them, they go back and serve, and their basic training and basic ethos which stays with them comes in. They remain part of reservist for long. And that is one of the advantages of this scheme, that you can extend the number of, suppose we go into a war somewhere down the line. So whatever whatever Agniveers you have, whatever in the service, you don't let them go out. Their service can be extended. You can quickly induct more, so the numbers can be ramped up much faster. The number of people who are trained recently and just gone into the society are high. They can be retrieved faster into a
Also
combat
civil
zone.
defense, right?
Civil defense strengthens. The general discipline today. Practically everybody gets involved.
So also
the civil
there's
society
very
needs
less
to be.
memory of people who remember how important civil defense was during the wars of 71 and
Absolutely.
63 also, if I was
65.
62. 62 is it 65 that the civil defense played a very major role. I don't know, maybe.
No, 65 played a very
yeah.
good role. 71 played a huge role.
Yeah, in two theatres at that time. So civil defense will be important, especially if you're talking about a two-front war.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
And they would be a huge asset. In fact, this would be one of the biggest advantages. Just imagine talking about it 20 years from now. Just imagine the number of people who have gone through this scheme who are in the civil society now. Okay, be it in CAPF, be it in paramilitary forces, etc. But in the society, in DPSUs, in your corporate, in your private sectors,
Yeah.
and the kind of dedication they bring there, and the kind of attention to nation first.
Okay, I am going
You know,
to
it will be a huge plus.
steer the conversation a little political. Thoda defense ho gaya. I'll come back to defense later because Ajit is like, political. So, okay. So, now that sir, you are in politics too, I have to ask you, Uttar Pradesh mein kya hua BJP ka? What happened? Was it something that you have all talked about and wondered? Were these the numbers that you expected? What happened there?
You're asking the wrong person.
Okay.
I don't have all the details. Neither have I discussed. But of course, if you ask me were these the numbers that I expected, obviously no. It was much lesser. It should have been much better.
So there are a number of vets who are in the BJP now. Do you have the same level of anxiety that politicians have when these kind of results come, which are unexpected? You're new to politics. How is your reaction different from your colleagues in the party?
I haven't reached that stage as yet, to tell you honestly. So I don't know, but the anxiety level is not there. I think it is how our democracy works, and you have to recognize all those people who were saying, democracy is in danger and this and that, the narratives that were being drawn. Look at what has happened, and this is the strength of the country. We are the mother of democracy, and that is what came out.
So your party
and the lessons that need to be learned to do better in the future. It's straightforward.
How was the experience of sitting solo in a fighter jet's cockpit and standing in an open jeep during road shows?
Both were enjoyable. Let me put it that way. The fighter was more enjoyable. You could do everything that you want. But this is a new
getting
field.
into politics where nothing works as planned, everything is on the spur of the moment, things change, plans changed, procedures change, all that changes. How do you adjust from where precision is so important in the Air Force to somewhere where discipline can take a toss at any point of time?
No, I don't think discipline can take a toss. There is a different kind of discipline and different level of discipline required there, and a different kind of dedication required. And like I said, I'm new to it. Many of these issues I haven't faced.
Okay.
But should I face? I don't think there's an issue. It is when you're working for the nation, it doesn't really.
And the rough
matter.
and tumble of politics, how is it different from what it was in when you were in service?
When I face it, I'll tell you.
How and when did you decide to join politics?
That's a tough question. For some time, there were many people who advised that why don't you asked even from my areas, and I said no, and generally we discussed. But having worked outside and looked at, I was helping the UP government in the defense industrial corridor, and I'm on the advisory panel on space, and I was working essentially with the industry a hell of a lot. I've seen a lot of industry in terms of startups, in terms of MSMEs, what's happening outside. And to my own, surprise, I came to the conclusion that if I just stay outside and try and work, there's not adequate that I can do what I can do as part of governance or as part of a party that can make a difference. And that's when I decided, let me join the party and be part of the team and be able to do something that can make a difference.
So the BJP, for many years, for decades, I would say, people would associate it with hyper nationalism, where they wear their nationalism on their sleeve. They're very solid about that aspect about it. But 2024 election saw the campaign from the opposition mounted even on that score. That आप कोई BJP जो है, ना आप हिंदुइज्म के ठेकेदार हो, ना आप नेशनल सिक्योरिटी के ठेकेदार हो. So everything was up for grabs. Everything was criticized, whether it was Mr. Modi on the China angle, whether it was handling of national security issues, whether it was the Agnipath scheme, Ayodhya वगैरह तो of course they were criticized about. So since I don't want to discuss that aspect with you, I want to discuss about the China aspect. They kept saying that Mr. Modi is so terrified of China कि वो नाम तक नहीं लेते हैं China का. What was your view on this as a politician and as a vet?
देखो, firstly, there is absolutely nothing wrong with nationalism, and that is a fundamental requirement that must be upfront, and we should all wear it on our sleeves. I don't understand why we should not. Okay. As far as you talked about election campaign, etc., and all these issues that were brought out in terms of criticizing, look at the development that has happened in the country in the last decade. So just see across the board, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be technological, whether it be in terms of financial infrastructure or our UPIs, we in many areas are leading the world. So infrastructurally, in terms of overall development across the board, I don't want to go into each of these. We have really gone at a trajectory which is much steeper than before. Okay, there is no doubt about that. Now the issue, a lot of criticism that was happening, it is in the domain of election, and most of it on false narratives or based on a lot of lies. For example, in Agnipath they said खाली scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and ये सब आएंगे, Agniveer में बाकियों को नहीं मिलेगा, all that kind of, these are all false statements. Similarly, on many of these narratives was based on a lot of falsehood, but that was election time. Now,
do you think that that's just election time and they are not going to continue with it? The opposition is not going to continue.
Might continue with it.
Might continue.
They want to, that is their way of taking on the government.
But BJP says that on national security, a lot of it was also sponsored or was instigated by foreign powers. Do you think that?
Okay, I'll come to that. On the issue of China,
on China,
what you asked earlier. Very clearly, on issue of China, when Galwan happened, what was the action we took? Have we ever taken such a strong action earlier to this level? Did we have a situation where the Chinese were given more than what they did? Okay, so thereafter, after Galwan, all three services, the way we mobilized, the way the quid pro quo was done by the army in terms of their own action on ground, and succeeded in that. The current status quo that we have achieved, and the current state of affairs of development in on the forward areas, and how we are deployed. We have fully taken on the situation there. There is no doubt. And never ever in the past have we done it with this strength. There's no need for Prime Minister to say or RM to say every time if China word or something, if I don't know what they're complaining about. But go by the facts on ground. And the facts on ground are very clear. The kind of action we took, it was never ever taken so strongly. And China knows it, and thereafter you see there is a fair amount of quiet and a lot of discussion taking place.
Okay.
On the issue of foreign intervention, interference that you mentioned, of course, the moment our rise starts,
India's rise.
Look at our development in the last 10 years. If we continue at the same rate, just imagine where we will reach. And this call for Viksit Bharat is absolutely game changing. Okay. It brings the whole nation together, and there is a target, there is a vision that we need to go towards this. This will rattle the world.
So there
that's
are
what we have to.
forces
So
trying
there
to-
will be forces that will work
Okay.
against. There would be interference. Election is the best time to have done all this, and I think there is a case that more in-depth study of this and little more. We could have been careful on possibilities like this, but it's new to us. The kind of interference which is now emerging, and the kind of on Chat GPT details that
Yes.
came out, etc., etc. And this is an eye opener. But look at how issue is not only foreign forces interfering. Issue is forces here and the parties here who are encouraging it and who are taking that support of interference. So we should look at it, and this is what needs to be understood by the people in depth.
Tackling false narratives.
Absolutely, tackling false narratives and tackling and knowing what is right and what is the genesis of some of these things.
Okay.
I think all that, when it comes out, people will understand better.
Right.
But there is a lot of our population where this narrative doesn't go in its full form. The facts.
Huh.
And we need to address this issue. How do we get the facts to the people who
At sometimes
to all?
it seemed like a cluster bombing. One narrative barely has come out, and the correction came in, and then the next one comes in. When it comes to national security matters, I mean, a lot of it was that.
Yeah,
But-
and when time cycle is short, some of it gets missed.
Yeah.
I think some important markers got missed in terms of this interference, or maybe the people who matter knew.
Yeah.
We don't know everything outside.
So you think now with this focus on indigenization or Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives, this and a lot of big defense deals are not going outside, which was the case earlier. Do you think that also makes the foreign forces ally with forces here to
No, you see, last
impact
4-5
the elections?
I get a point. Last 4-5 decades, I think we've succumbed to this whole cycle of build to print or license manufactured, etc., etc. Okay, in spite of DRDO coming up and DPSUs coming up, largely we've remained in that cycle. Except for some projects which DRDO did very well, and now we are getting out of it. Last 10 years is the changeover time that has happened on this defense industrial
Corridors.
not only corridors, on the defense industrial
Complex,
capability.
okay.
If you talk about and I think Atmanirbharta in defense is the strongest pillar that we need to work on towards Viksit Bharat. The more we go into indigenous designed and developed manufacture, it's not only good enough to manufacture, but our own design and then we manufacture is the key. And I think we are moving in that direction. Very much. You look at all the reforms, and now DRDO is there is talk that it's undergo further reforms. DPSUs are evolving. Private sector needs to come up in a very, very big way. There are still a lot of hurdles that private sector faces, and now I know it firsthand in the last 2 years. Our startups are even facing even more hurdles on financials. In how do they step in? New tech development. This is where we need to change.
R&D also.
R&D.
Yeah.
Putting money in the R&D. When this changes and we get onto true Atmanirbharta trajectory, this is a huge development. And your question whether this will rattle some of the forces outside, of course it will. Of course. And that is why, from our point of view, as defense services, as industry, as government, we need to take very strong steps in this direction. That come what may, we will make our own and fight with our own and have a target for that. And I think that is what we are doing.
Sir, now this is one of the reforms which was there in the BJP manifesto or the Sankalp Patra also, and it has been reiterated by the Prime Minister also, that the government will continue to work towards the reforms in higher defense reforms, like the creation of theatre commands. Your view on that, sir, and how quickly you foresee the commands coming up? And
no, to the best of my knowledge, a lot of work has happened, and a lot of discussion has happened in this domain between the three services and CDS. And I think in some of those events, CDS had given very clear statements that they have done a lot of good work in terms of sorting out how they would form these theatre commands. There's a lot of agreements on the issue, and I think you will see it very soon. This year, you will see it very soon how this will form and what the next steps will be taken. So I think they are well on track now, and the results will be known very soon.
On that note, thank you so much, sir, for sparing the time and coming to the podcast and explaining in great detail about the Agnipath scheme and other related issues.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.